Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the quarterly meeting of the Technical Oversight Committee. I am Julie LaRocque with the South Florida Water Management District. We need to go over a few business items here, so we'll go ahead and do that. If those of you who are reps who are here in the audience could please introduce yourselves.
Donato Sarad, Everglades National Park.
Ed Smith, Florida Department of Environmental Protection.
Lori Miller, Loxahatchee National Wildlife Refuge.
And then we have only one rep on the line here, Dan.
Good morning. Good morning. Dan Crawford, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
And I know we already did a sound check, but Mr. Barquette, if you could also say hello.
Yes, good morning to everyone.
All right, so we're going to, now that we've done that, I'm going to ask the folks who are quote unquote participants on Zoom, as I call out your agency or whatever it is, to please introduce yourselves. A couple of you have tuned in since we did the mic check, so this will also be a mic check for you. So if you are representing DEP, could you please say hello?
This is Kenny Heyman, Florida DEP.
Yes, and this is Charles DeMonico, outside counsel for the DEP.
And this is Mylene Sotolongo, also from Florida Department of Environmental Protection.
Okay, thank you. How about DOI?
This is Bill Walker, consultant to DOI.
Anybody else from DOI? Dilip, are you going to be?
Yeah, good morning. This is Dilip from National Park Service.
Great, thank you. Let's see, who else do we have? Army Corps. Anybody else on the Zoom call from the Army Corps?
Looks like I'm flying solo this morning, Julie.
Is that good? God, Dan. Totally fine. Speaking of Dan's, US EPA.
Good morning, Dan Scheit with you, US EPA. Also attending is Chris Decker.
Great, thank you. Department of Justice.
Good morning, this is Judy Coleman for the Department of Justice.
Thank you, and I forgot about the South Florida Water Management District. If you could introduce yourself if you're on Zoom, please.
Good morning, this is Julia LaMonaco with the South Florida Water Management District Office of Counsel.
Great, thank you. I think that's everybody. So let's see, we're going to have a little fun today. So if you're on the phone or on Zoom, please do mute when you're not speaking. Probably you should reduce the volume on your computer to 0 if you have headset on. If you used a telephone to call in, and I know we have a number of attendees here who we have not introduced, but if you did use a telephone to call in, you could press *9 to raise your hand so that we could call on you, and then you can unmute by pressing *6. Also, if you are speaking from the cyberspace here, we do appreciate if you would state your name when you speak. Public comment. So we do have a voting item today. So we're going to take public comments twice. The first time will be after we entertain whatever motion may be put out. We'll take public comment on that. And then after we vote, we will have another more open public comment period. So just so you guys are all good with that. I do want to mention those of you on Zoom who just introduced yourselves, you're a panelist. And while we're discussing a presentation or doing our thing here, you guys should raise your hand and wait so that I can call on you or your agency person can call on you. And then your agency rep may call on you at any time. So if Ed wants to ask Mylene a question, he can certainly do that at any time. But This really helped us with a meeting last time, and I think it's a great way for us to proceed. So really appreciate that. For those of you who are attendees, and there's close to 30 of you here, so thank you for that. We do appreciate you tuning in, and we do want to keep you engaged in our processes here. So, and I do typically look at who the attendees are, and if you raise your hand at some other time, I try to figure out if we need to call on you at that point. But otherwise, we will call on you during one of the 2 public comment periods. If you need to use chat, please do that only for technical difficulties. That's one of those things we don't track much. Normally, we don't engage or respond much to public comments during this particular meeting, but we do want to hear from you, and I know some of us kind of feel like we'd like to respond, but just to let you know that if we let you know we're going to get back to you, we will do that also. For the reps, a couple of things we're going to do at the end of the meeting. We need to select a couple more meeting dates. I don't want to wait until June to figure out our last 2 meetings of the quarter of the year. And we'd like to record action items for the next meeting, but I realize it may be a little difficult, so we'll be looking for that. I do normally actually go to the webpage and read off what's on the webpage, but I actually went there yesterday and confirmed. So we have a number of things on the main webpage. We have the read aheads. If you click on the read ahead links, it'll pull down the list of items. So we've got the presentation that Chelsea is going to give. We have a letter from 2016, which is directions to us from the principals. We also have the draft meeting notes from December's meeting. I do want to point out to everyone, I think we've now posted a 3rd version of meeting notes, and I'll comment further on that when we get to that item on our agenda. There's also some instructions for Zoom and other things there. Also on the website, we have the actual 3rd quarter settlement agreement report. This is the 3rd quarter of the calendar year. It is the 4th quarter of the federal water year. We have a quality assessment report narrative, and we have a spreadsheet containing that data if you are a person who likes to download the data. Also, we have total phosphorus data tables posted on the webpage. So we have the refuge compliance table from 2007 through the 3rd calendar quarter of 23. We have provisional Shark River Slough tracking 3rd quarter of 2023. We have Taylor Slough and Coastal Basin tracking through the 3rd quarter of 2023. And the final agenda is out there as well. So just to kind of get that over with for you guys, let's launch. Oh, and I do want to mention, since I have one here, if you're here in person and you're going to have public comments, we would really appreciate you filling out the public comment form. And I do have one. It looks like the subject is for the second part of public comments, just so you guys are aware of that. I think most everyone else in the audience at the moment is associated with the reps and the agencies here, so I'm glad you guys are all here too. All right, we did all of that. Okay, approval of the meeting summary from the December meeting. I want to thank Violetta Chuka, first of all, for getting us all lined up and here today. But she did interact with the reps, so we sent draft meeting notes to the reps. We did receive some comments and adjusted the notes accordingly. So that is the set of notes that's currently posted on the webpage. And I'm hoping we've all now seen them, and I would entertain a motion to approve or not those meeting notes.
This is Donato. I have motion to approve the meeting notes.
And this is Ed Smith.
Wait, we have a hand up. Can we call on Dan Scheit?
Sorry, Dan, I see your hands up.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. I want to note or point out that on page 9 of the minutes, there is a typo. where it says, Mr. Scheit asked about inflows do not affect TO concentrations. It inflows to the park. That should be TP concentrations. It inflows to the park instead of TO concentrations. That's line 7, the big paragraph on page 9.
But I'm kind of surprised with the number of eyes on it that we missed that. So, Donato, does your motion also include changing TO to TP?
I motion to change TO to TP and then approve the notes. Thanks, Dan.
I second that. Thank you. Ed Smith.
Anybody opposed? Okay, I think we're good, and I see you put your hand down. Okay, thank you, Dan. All right, I'd like to now introduce Chelsea Q. She's a lead engineer, actually, in my group. Chelsea is going to give us the third quarter of calendar year 23 settlement agreement report.
So, good morning, Mr. Barkett. Good morning, Ms. Barkett, also to see maps. Thank you for having me to present the settlement agreement report for the third quarter 2023. So the third quarter concludes water year 2023. It's a time to assess the annual compliance for Shark River Slough and Taylor Swan Coastal Basin inflows to Everglades National Park. Because these two inflows, the assessment is based on the federal water year from October to September. For Shark River Slough, the results are still provisional, pending the finalization of flow data. Therefore, we'll present the final results during our next meeting. But for Taylor Swan and Coastal Basins, the water year 2023 results are final and will be presented here. And for the refuge, we have the monthly compliance results for July, August, and September 2023, because the refuge is assessed based on monthly criteria. So this summary table presented the compliance results for these 3 areas. Each area is below this green shaded row. And the top is for the refuge, and the middle is for Shark River Slough inflow, and the bottom is for Taylor Swan and Coastal Basin inflows. So looking vertically along these columns, the second column displays stages and flows, and usually they are the basis for calculating compliance standards. So for the third column, and it displays the compliance standards, a stage-based limit for the refuge, a flow-based for Shark River Slough, and a cons limit for Taylor Swan Coastal Basins. So among these 3 water bodies, Shark River Slough has the lowest compliance limit, and typically Taylor Swan Coastal Basin has the highest. And the refuge limit falls usually between, like for this quarter, it ranges from 8.3 to 10.1 parts per billion. So to the right, the 4th column has the observed data for comparison with the compliance standards. And also Shark River Slough usually has the highest flow values, among these three water bodies. So for Shark River Slough, this extremely low limit and high TP values pose a challenge in meeting compliance. For compliance results, both the refuge and Taylor Swift coastal basins are in compliance, except for Shark River Slough. So here, Shark River Slough, the water year 2023 data is shown in the last row in this middle section. So September 2023, this row. So the water year 2023 flow with mean TP concentration was 9.2 parts per billion, exceeded the limit 7.6 parts per billion. And this slide shows the refuge monthly compliance results. So this top section covers the 3 months in our regular reporting, and the bottom section provides an outlook in the next 4 months. So the refuge has a stage-based limit, and stage has increased from 16.4 to 16.8, about 0.4 feet increase from July to September. And the long-term level, which is the limit, is inversely correlated with the stage. So the stage increased about 0.4 feet, and the limit dropped 1.8 parts per billion from 10.1 to 8.3. And the geometric mean TP concentration of observed data is below 5.8 parts per billion, far below their respective long-term levels. The next 4 months looks good. The geometric mean continues to remain below the corresponding long-term levels. And this slide shows the monthly compliance status in the past 3 years. Here, the shaded purple background represents the marsh stage. This red line represents a long-term level, which is the water quality standards. And you can see inversely correlate to stage. So the stage increased from April to September, then a long-term level dropped. And these blue dots represent the observed data, observed geometric mean of samples collected in the marsh. And this red dot represents an excursion occurred in, I think, June 2022. And since then, we're in compliance for, there's no excursion since then. Then the 36-month average geometric mean is 6.7 parts per billion, 2.5 parts per billion below the average long-term levels. Then this slide shows the similar information, just in a different way. So move on to Shark River Slough. So the top section of this table shows the 3-month tracking and the water year 2023 provisional results we're reporting for this quarter. Then the bottom section provides an outlook in the next 4 months. So Shark River Slough has a flow-based limit, and you can see that the flow has exceeded 1 million acre-feet consistent in these months shown here. And the long-term limit is inversely correlated with this flow. And because the flow exceeded the appendix E equation maximum, then drives the long-term limit to the minimum of the appendix range, 7.6 parts per billion. So all these months, you can see the long-term limit is 7.6 parts per billion. And the flow with mean TP concentration here ranged higher. And for the water year 2023 provisional results, and you can see the total flow was 1.25 million acre feet. And the flow in TP concentration was 9.2 parts per billion, exceeded the long-term limit. And this slide shows the historical compliance status. And the red line represents the annual long-term limit. And these blue bars represent the annual flow with mean TP concentration. And the last 3 hash bars represent the compliance methodology changed to method 1.5. And for the last 3 years, we met the compliance 2020, then had an exceedance in 2021, 2022, then also 2023 with the provisional data. And this slide displays the daily flow into Shark River Slough in the last 3 years. And the last 3 years were the COP implementation years. So the COP operation plan started being implemented at the beginning of October, the water year 2020. And here, the red line represents the flow route through S334 going to South State. So these, only the flow above this red line is used in calculating compliance numbers.
Holy shit.
And you can see that since COP has been implemented, the S334 flow has reduced, almost eliminated, except like here a little bump, then also in 2021. But the current water year 2023, all the flow went to Shark River Slough. And for water year 2023, you can see that flow increased in October, November 2022 due to the wet conditions at the beginning of the year and in September 2022, prior beginning of the year, related to Hurricane Ian. And then also for this quarter, you can see also flow increase in the wet season. And this slide shows the daily flows discharged into the Western Shark River Slough via S12A, B, C, D from the top to the bottom. So in this section of 29 canal, you can see that most flow come from S12D, and then the second is S12C. So S12A and B were usually closed, then in the dry season, then open on July 15th. And you can see the S12A and B were open, started flowing on July 15th. Usually they're open 2.5 to 3.5 months, unless there's a deviation. And this slide shows the flow discharge into the eastern L29 canal between S33 and S334. So in this second canal, 95% of water come from S33 and S33N. And a small, less than 5% of flow come from S356 pumping. This slide shows the similar information. And this slide displays the bi-weekly flow in these blue bars, and also the TP levels along with this flow in the cyan dots. And this is the net flow that discharged into Shark River Slough. And this pair of data is used to calculate the 12-month flow with mean TP concentration. So when we talk about annual flow in concentration, it's based on actually this 26 periods of data. And you can see that the flow in, the TP concentrations were similar in these 3 years. And there's substantial net inflow during the dry season. And 1 year 2022, there's a small gap because 2022 was much drier, like a dry year. Then 2023, we see substantial flow during the dry season. And this flow has been identified at the cause that causing high TP concentrations in compliance calculation. So this slide includes two tracking lines. One is this blue diamond representing the 12-month tracking flow in concentration, and this red dashed line representing the 12-month tracking long-term limit. And as I said, these 3 years are the COP operation years. And actually, even COP operation started October 2020, but the time trail flow formula actually began March 2021, because the time trail flow formula only apply in zone B. The stage was high in this period, and which fell into zone B, then that's where time trail flow formula kicked in. So actually started in March 2021. So now focusing this red dashed line, this is the tracking long-term limit, and start in October 20 at about 9 parts per billion. Then after the time trail flow formula kicked in, this long-term limit has remained quite stable, hovering near 7.6 parts per billion. So here, only in June 2022, this was very dry, and it bumped a little bit to 8.2 parts per billion. Otherwise, it remained at 7.6 parts per billion. Because the flow, every month we're tracking, usually near or exceeds the 1 million acre feet. So now looking at these blue diamonds, these are 12-month tracking flow with mean TP concentrations. And in February 2021, the flow in mean was at about 7.2 parts per billion. Then after the time trail flow formula kicked in, and you see this flow in mean increase. The time trail flow formula increased flow under 9.2 feet, and which elevate the flow in mean concentration. So now the flow in mean concentration stayed about 9 to 10 parts per billion. And this figure, you can see that these two lines used to be very close. Now they diverged. And with the flow in mean consistently above long-term limit. So this slides illustrate the challenges in meeting compliance in the current system. So if we continue the path with more flow and using the flow-based limit and the current method of compliance, calculate compliance. So that's the system we're facing today. So this slide shows the system conditions. So the WC3 stage here in the solid blue line at the top, and the TP concentrations shown in these blue dots in the middle, and the flow at the bottom in these blue shaded areas. So when this solid blue line is below this dash gray line, that means the operation is in zone B, so time trail flow formula is applied. So here I said as I said earlier, so October 2020, that's when the COPS implementation started, but actually the timing to flow formula kicked in here in March, only when this solid blue line fell under this gray dash line. So we see similar thing, the TP concentration in these 3 years is very similar peaks, similar trend. And also we see increased flow in the dry season. And this year, 2023, is quite substantial. So move on to Taylor Slough and coastal basins. Here, the water year 2023 data is shown the last row. So the total flow was 357,000 acre feet. And the flowing mean TP concentration was 4.6 parts per billion, far below the 11 parts per billion limit, which is a constant limit. For historic compliance status, and the annual flow mean was far below the long-term limit. And this slide shows the daily flow over the past 3 years flowing into Taylor Slough and coastal basins. And here at the top is S18C, in the middle shaded area is G737, the bottom is 332D. So for water year 2023, you can see also here the flow increased due to the impact of Hurricane Ian. And also this wet season, you can see also increased flow at S18C and S332D. So this slide displays daily flows at each individual structure. So the most flow come from S18C and 332D pumping, and G737 and 328 were flowing in this quarter. So it started flowing in July. And this slide displays inflow and outflow of S332D flowway. So the upstream source of water is the pumping by S332D, is shown in this blue-purple background. And this red line represents the flow carried by S332DX1 to the north detention area, to the C111 south detention area, actually. So only the flow above this red line is included in the compliance calculation. Oh, also here, forget about this. This neon green line represents flow at S328, which represents the flow sent to Taylor Slough. And this slide displays the event flow in this blue bars and the TP levels in sign dots. You can see in water year 2023, all the TP concentrations were below 10 parts per billion. And we also include this string of blue diamond representing the 12-month tracking fluid mean concentration. And the last number is what we're reporting for the water year 2023. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chelsea. Does anyone have comments or questions for Chelsea?
Thank you, Chelsea. Good job as usual, and I appreciate some of the visuals, the new visuals. With respect to the refuge, in November, there was a stage of 17.15 feet. I'm curious to understand why we look like we missed the whole sampling day of samples. So it says we only collected 8. So it suggests that 6 are missing. Do we know why?
The refuge, let me go to which slide?
It says slide 3.
Slide 3, okay. Could you repeat your question?
So we had a stage of 17.15 feet, suggesting the whole refuge is entirely flooded. So I'm not clear why we missed 6 samples.
I'm really sorry. I have a hard time to understand if you.
He's wondering why we were missing 6 samples in November 23.
November 23, okay, that's the outlook. We haven't started looking. I haven't looked at. Why? We'll bring the answer next meeting.
Thank you, Chelsea.
Anything else? Dan Crawford, anything from you? I'm looking at head shaking here, so great. Thanks so much, Chelsea. We really appreciate your coming here with all this great information. Okay, our next agenda item is a follow-up discussion about the Shark River Slough exceedances for federal water year 21 and federal water year 22. Unless somebody else wants to barge in, I do have some information I'd like to put on the table. Okay, so hopefully we all remember the 3 questions. Those are in the memo dated 2016 from the principals, the 3 items that we agreed some years ago we would look at in addressing exceedances. So the first 2 questions basically have to do with, have we looked at all available data and have we determined whether or not the exceedance is caused by a data error or extraordinary natural phenomenon? And at previous meetings over the last 2 years or so, we have all agreed that that is not the case. What we did not do, however, was move on to question number 3. So I'd like to propose a motion now for both of these water years that given the activities, the conclusions, and the recommendations of the S333 working group, we do not recommend any additional remedies for federal water years 21 and 22 at this time.
Hey, Julie, Ed Smith, DEP. I believe that the projects as proposed by the 333 working group and what has been presented by the principals will address the exceedances we saw in 21 and 22. And concur that there are no additional revenue or remedies that need to be provided by the TOC members at this time.
Okay, that sounds like a second to me. First of all, any discussion from the reps right now? I'm not seeing or hearing any. Let me move over to members of the public. Dan, you have your hand up.
Hey, Julie. This is Dan Crawford, Corps of Engineers. I just wanted to confirm that I have coordinated with Colonel Booth, and we would also second that motion. We support that the investigations of the local drivers that resulted in the recommendations from the 333 working group, which was presented at the previous TOC meeting, that is responsive to both of the Shark River Slough exceedances in water year 21 and water year 22. So we are in full support of that path forward. Over.
Okay, thank you. And before we officially vote, even though we've mostly voted here, I do want to take a look and see if we have any public comment. Sorry about that. I have a hand raised. I don't know if you're commenting on this item, Paul, or if you were commenting in general. Do you have a comment on the motion that's on the table?
Hi, Julie. Yeah, just I think right now, just a comment in general. Let you guys do your due diligence and motion and all that kind of stuff, and then I'll comment afterwards regarding Shark River Slough and Taylor Slough coastal basins. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Paul. I don't see any other public comment on this motion. All in favor?
Well, before, I just wanted to make a comment. This is John Barquette. I don't
Sure.
have I don't have a good understanding of schedule for implementing recommendations of that working group. Do you have a schedule? Is this something that occurs on a 10-year scale, a 5-year scale, a 3-year scale, a 1-year scale? What are you looking at?
I'd really prefer somebody from the working group to answer that. I don't know if Jody's here in the auditorium, so if Jody could come to one of the microphones and just kind of give a response to Mr. Barquette, that would be great. Thank you.
And then in addition to time, is there budget? Are there budget considerations? Is the funding there to implement all the work, or is these recommendations going to hang out and you got to wait for funding? That's the other question.
Okay, so how about you go first, Jody, and Ed also has some additional information he can add about the funding question, I think.
Great. Hi, thank you. This is Jody Hutchins with the district. I'm the lead coordinator for the S333 working group. So to answer the question related to schedule, and what was presented at the last meeting indicates that the initial engineering and maintenance solutions will be completed by federal water year 2025. So that puts us in September of 2025. And then directly following the completion of those engineering and maintenance solutions will kick in the monitoring and assessment plan. So that monitoring and assessment plan will occur. We're going to be monitoring the effectiveness and try to see if there's any need for optimization. And then we're going to be looking at that data and analyzing it and reporting to the principals on it every year. And that is going to last for up to 5 years. And based on that information, it will be decided what future, if any, actions will be necessary.
Okay, and Ed, I think you raised your hand on the funding.
Thanks, Julie. Yeah, the department working with South Florida, we've had the resources to cover all the construction and monitoring costs for this.
Okay, well, I would just appreciate it if on the TOC, at the TOC meetings going forward, we have some sort of a report so that we can show even in table form the scheduled activities and then the status of their completion so that the public is kept informed as to the progress. You've got 3 straight exceedances. It looks like another one's going to occur. So want to make sure that these tasks that have been outlined, in fact, are on schedule and are funded and are being implemented. And I think it's important to keep the public informed as to the status given the number of violations here.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Barquette. Any other comment before we officially vote here on the motion on the table? Seeing none, everybody who is in favor, if you could please say so or raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Aye, thank you very much, everybody. And also, Mr. Barquette, thank you for your thoughtful questions and comments. Okay, now we're going to move on to general public comment. So those of you on Zoom who are attendees, even if you put your hand down, you can put it back up. I'd first like to call on Mr. Newton Cook, who is here with us in the auditorium. I'm hoping that microphone is on over there. If not, somebody will rush up to help you, Mr. Cook.
I guess this is working okay. Newton Cook, United Water Files of Florida. I was here yesterday and one of the best meetings, probably the best meetings I ever attended on the SDAs is really what it came down to, and the functions of the SDAs. And of course, the SDAs are cleaning the water before it gets to where we are today on this meeting. We've had a great success. I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I have seen the success. of cleaning the water before it got to the park and before it got to the refuge. And I spent a lot of time in a refuge, and I watched it deteriorate horribly, and I've watched it get better. Problem is we have today is this water is all coming down the system. And where does a lot of it come from? It comes from Lake Okeechobee. And we have a plan going into effect in Lake Okeechobee called LOSM. It will guarantee the dirtiest water in the history will be coming out of the lake down the system, whether it goes east or west or south. If you have a high lake, you have high levels of phosphorus, well up over 200 parts per billion. When you have a lower lake, and the lake is managed within the region of 12 to 15 feet with Mother Nature knocking us back and forth, you have a low percentage of phosphorus coming down the system. The EAA runoff goes to the SDAs. That's rain determined. And it can be determined if they use irrigation from the lake, because the lake water is up to 250 parts per billion sometimes. But just think what's going to happen when you're dumping lake water into the WCAs. That's more consistently at that 200 to 250 parts per billion level. The WCAs are a third cattails already. The middle part's in pretty good shape. The south end is wonderful because the water sitting at the trail, as we all know, meets the 10 to 13 parts per billion phosphorus most of the time, obviously. Mother Nature plays games. But what we're getting ready to do with this LOSM is we're going to guarantee that we're going to be sending dirty water south. Guaranteed. More often than ever before. What's going to clean that water? We have a great success story today. What's going to clean that more dirty water? And I can only tell you, the restriction at the bottom of the lake, 6,000 CFS to flow south. How are you going to move the water out of the lake when it's high, when you can only move 6,000 CFS south? But that's going to be the dirtiest 6,000 CFS you ever got coming south. We're facing a loss of a lot of work and a lot of hundreds of millions of dollars if we get the lake up and keep it up to 16 feet and allow the storms, the wind, the blooms to flourish. We have no vegetation to clean the water. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Other public comments? Dr. Julian, you have your hand up.
Hi, Julie. Thanks again. Paul Julian, the Everglades Foundation. I want to commend you guys for giving that presentation. The information shown during this meeting as opposed to past couple of years, there's a lot more info there. So we're getting a finer resolution of information and understanding what's going on. The thing that's concerning, obviously, is our consistent exceedance of the long-term limit. Both, since COP has been implemented currently, this last water year that was reported on. I guess the thing that causes a little bit of concern is this year, of course, we're dealing with record rainfall as well as record flows. And so last time we had a condition like this, the following year we exceeded the limit again. So if you look at the 2017 Shark River Slough inflow, we exceeded it pretty well. So, given the climatic forecast and conditions, I guess, it might behoove us to think a little bit ahead and weigh our options, since we have the working group, and hopefully remedies will be enacted to affect the Shark River Slough inflows and help get us back to the long-term limit. I guess a question associated with the working group information, and I know you guys can't answer it here, but it would be helpful, useful if the recommendations provided by that working group be provided to the public. You posted on the website somewhere. I don't know if it is, I couldn't find it, but it would be helpful to be able to understand what's being recommended, and kind of what that's going to look like. And for Taylor Slough coastal basins, it's amazing that we're getting a lot more water into Taylor Slough. It could be a good thing. It could also be a bad thing considering what we've learned from the past of direct discharges to Taylor Slough coastal basins. One thing that I guess is a semi-question or statement is, has there been any assessment of conditions within Upper Taylor Slough to see if anything is changing associated with this new regime that we're under? I know there's been a lot of work done prior. There's been an Upper Taylor Slough kind of assessment with water quality, periphyte, soils. There's been extra soils samples collected throughout Upper Taylor Slough. I don't know if it would be good for us to kind of look at that from a synthesis perspective and learn a little bit from changes in management and consequences downstream. I know that was long-winded. I appreciate it. And if need be, I'll follow up with you guys afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. There has been work going on in Upper Taylor Slough. I will confess right now, I have not checked to see if any of that is being published at the end of this week in the South Florida Environmental Report, but I do encourage folks to look there to see if that information is in Volume 1. I think it would be in Chapter 6 if it's available. And I do want to mention the information from the S333 working group, I believe, is posted in the meeting archive, so it'll show up under the December meeting, and Jody's nodding her head, so just to give you a heads up there, I will be fine with us trying to find a way to make that a little more visible to folks so you don't have to hunt. I think that's a great idea. So thank you, everybody. I do not see any more hands raised. We have a little bit of business we need to conduct before we close today. Our next meeting is June 25th. I almost gave the wrong date. Shame on me. We have several other dates available to potentially have quarterly meetings, and if you guys have a moment to look at your calendars, I'd like to go ahead and try to get those calendared for our planning purposes. For the late September timeframe, we have a Thursday, that's September 26th, or if you're really in love with Tuesdays, we have October 1st, which would be the beginning of many fiscal years and even the federal water year. So September 26th or October 1st are available for the meeting after June.
What was the day for the June meeting? I'm sorry.
The June meeting is June 25th, Tuesday, June 25th.
So I would go with the October 1st one, if that's possible, or whatever October date that was. October 1st.
Okay, Donato's good with October 1st. I'm good with either of these dates. Dan or Mr. Parquet, if you have comments on September 26th.
October 1st is fine.
Yeah, this is Dan. I support October 1st as well.
Works for me. Thank you.
And Mr. Parquet, I was probably talking over you. Are you good with October 1st?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, great, thank you.
I'm okay with October 1st as well.
Great, thank you. All right, December, we're looking at Tuesday, December 3rd, or Thursday, December 5th.
Tuesday, December 3rd works for me.
It works for me also.
Lori's good with that.
This is John Barquette. I'm fine with December 3rd also.
And this is Dan Crawford. I'll make it unanimous. December 3rd is good.
Great, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate that. And given that we don't have any more business for today, I'd like to adjourn the meeting. I really appreciate everyone tuning in and participating today. So thank you so much.